You found us through fly fishing. You'll stay for our passion and the community. Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Podcast.
Yeah, but he doesn't get it. How come fly fishermen don't get it?
You only haul with the short power snap.
Look for where people walk and the insides of bends and hunt those.
The roof blew off and the interior walls got sucked out. And the trees are just coming up. And I mean, he's clearly not going to clear the trees.
It is not a fly fishing story. It's a story about me trying to understand my brother through fly fishing.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
We've been waiting for you. Follow our guests, follow us on Instagram, and share this episode and the love if you enjoy this podcast. And we are live in 3, 2, 1. How you doing, Al?
Doing great, Dave. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for coming on here. I remember when I first heard about you guys, it was hard to pronounce the name. Like, do you find that a lot of people struggle with? Is Bajio, is that correct, the pronunciation?
Yep, Bajio. The J is pronounced as an H. And we knew when we named the company that, a lot of people, especially from my part of the world in the South, are going to have a hard time pronouncing it. But it was so perfect for the world that we love and want to be a part of and help. So, and it was a beautiful old Mexican name. So we went with it and said, hey, maybe it'll generate some conversation. And it certainly has.
Yeah, it has. And it means it's basically flats, right? That's the definition.
Yeah, it's the shallows. So it could be like the saltwater marshes in Charleston. It could be the bayous in New Orleans and Louisiana. It could be the saltwater flats like you think of with the Bahamas and stuff like that. But it's basically like from an ecological standpoint, it's the area it's really close to land. It's shallow and it's like an estuary, where all the young fish grow up. And so really important for the future of the oceans. And it's probably under the most pressure because it's right next to land. And so all the nonsense that goes on land just dumps right onto the flats and to the shore. And it's very commercial, right? So you got beaches and you got tourism, you got all these things going on that makes it even harder to protect them, But that's the area we love. And so that's why we named it that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we've had a number of episodes, focusing on conservation from, that part of the world, especially because, just like you're talking, there's a lot of issues and, there's a lot of struggles. I think that's something I know you're focused on, improving, some of that, but, and you're in there. So now are you in Florida? Is that where you actually live?
Yeah, we live in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, which is a cool little town. We love it. We're actually making a little film about it right now because it's our hometown, but it's really unique. It's on the east coast of Florida, south of Daytona, and surfing is as big as fishing is here.
Oh, wow.
And so you've got at the north end where you have Ponce Inlet. It's an inlet that comes from the Indian River out into the ocean, and there's a killer surf break there. So it's probably the best on the East Coast, the most consistent. And so the surf community here is huge. And then at the south end of New Smyrna, you've got Mosquito Lagoon, which is super famous for fly fishing for redfish. So, when the surf's up, the kids are out surfing. When it's not, they're out fishing. So it's really a fun environment to be in. And, you see the kids with their bikes and they've got a surfboard rack and then they've got a fly fishing
oh, that's cool.
Conventional rack. And so they're just tooling around doing it all. And it's really fun.
That's cool. And are you into surfing too?
I have done some surfing. I wouldn't say that I'm a surfer. I wouldn't qualify. It's
right.
I get out on my paddleboard and surf on the paddleboard. But as far as like short boards and stuff, I don't know. I didn't grow up doing that. And so it's hard for an old dude to learn new tricks, right?
I know. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's the thing. I've done a little surfing. I got a board in the garage, but it collects a lot of dust most of the year. This is great. So in part of this world, we've done a lot of episodes around through there, but that part of the world isn't as busy. And this is kind of just fly fishing too, right? A lot of the trout is still dominates and stuff. So we do a lot of episodes there. But I love getting into this because I think, there's so many opportunities, so many species that we haven't got into. And we'll talk about that today. Let's take it back real quick before we jump in. I want to talk about Bajio and how you transferred from, Costa, and you kind of built that empire at Costa and helped you're part of that whole process, and now starting a new company. I want to hear what that was like for you. But take us back to fly fishing real quick. What was the first memory of fly fishing? How'd you get into this?
I came to fly fishing probably a little bit later, maybe when I was 40 or something like that. So maybe 25 years ago. And, I'd always fished as a kid. I was from the South, and so we'd go down to the beach and fish with conventional and fish for bass and everything else. But fly fishing was like a dream, and when I saw Flip Pallot's show about Walker Cay Chronicles, that was like spoke to me. I was like, this is my destiny, man. I've got to do this. And I remember the first time that, that I went out, and I was just hoping that it was going to live up to the expectations, and it freaking did. And I was like, wow, this is just as cool as thought it was going to be. And I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah. And that was your first experience on a flat? Were you on the flats?
Actually, my very first experience was on the Deschutes in Oregon, up near
Wow.
Bend. Yeah. And I got a fly rod and had some friends, and I said, man, I want to go out and learn how to fly fish. And so they took me out on the Deschutes, and I caught a fish my first time out, which was really great, and kept me hooked. And then it became much more about saltwater, but back and forth. I mean, I spent a ton of time in Bozeman. Later on, moved to Bozeman, and then a lot of time in Park City. My friend Chris Fisher had a cabin on the river there, and we would go out and fish there quite a bit. So it was a nice mix between the fresh and the salt from the very beginning.
Yeah. And now with Bajio, do you find like your customer typically, or do you have a large mix? I mean, what is your focus when you think of your target customer for Bajio? Do you think of it as more salt, fresh, just all outdoor stuff? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, we really position the brand as the shallows, and so saltwater fly fishing is probably at the core, and then young people as well. The youth, that's a big part of our brand and who we're all about. So it was kind of like the Gen Y, Gen Zs who are on the flats, but they're also inshore, offshore. They're kind of doing everything. But our focus, is definitely that's where it started, and then other parts of the fishing community just sort of demanded that we speak to them as well. So the bass community, we've gotten huge in the offshore salt community, the inshore salt community. All of those have reached out, and we've embraced them. And we try to keep everything. I like to keep the story organic and keep it, just kind of connected and tight where it makes sense. And so, if you think about, why would Bajio, which is positioned as an inshore, saltwater brand, be speaking to offshore people? Well, I ask them, where do you get your bait? And they get their bait in the shallows. And what happens when the shallows are not healthy? And they're like, well, we've got no goggle eyes, and we've got no ballyhoo. And so it's in everybody's interest, to protect, the nursery where the young people in the future are. And for fishing, it's important for us to think about young people, and they're the future of our sport as well. And I think they get neglected lots of times. I see a lot of people in the fly industry where they want to keep it this exclusive club and to be old rich white dudes who want to do that, and they want to keep everything really expensive and exclusive, and you don't want to blow up people's spots and stuff like that, but we have to all, I think, have at least a portion of what we're doing dedicated to the health of the community. And that means bringing in fresh blood, fresh life, with young people, women, people of different races, whatever. We got to keep that river flowing.
Today's episode is sponsored by Togens Fly Shop, who provides superior quality products at an affordable price. An amazing resource for fly tying materials, tools, and fishing accessories. Since 2005, Togens has been over-delivering on price, service, and passion. And now you can check out that Togens buzz for yourself. Right now, you can head over to wetflyswing.com/Togens to get started. That's Togens. You support this podcast by clicking through that link to Togens online. I love that. It's awesome. And I think the old rich white guy, is slowly going away, and we had that, we had a recent episode with Dick Segura from TFO. He's a rep there. He was talking about the history. Like he was talking about the history of how when TFO came in, Lefty Kreh was a big person that helped get TFO on the map. And there was a big backlash from a lot of the big brands, the big rod companies. I think, what he said was like, they didn't think it was good that this low, less expensive, great rod was out there. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think there's some of that's been going on, but I really feel like, like you said, as things change and the demographic changes, it's just people are embracing diversity because it's where we should all be. So this is amazing. Well, and I always think, like you said it, the niches. I always think of this quote that I say it a lot, but the riches are in the niches, which is kind of a funny quote. But, you start niche down like from a brand, right? And you just nail that. And then you expand out, right, into bigger brands. But Costa is one of those things. We've worked with Costa before. They're a great company. You were there. Talk about that. Like what was your connection to Costa? And then why? And then what was the transition like as you moved into Bajio to start a new company?
Yeah, I mean, I was with Costa, not from day one, but early on. We were a little $6 million Florida brand when I joined, and I took over marketing but was responsible for the brand and pretty much all the strategy work for all aspects of the company. So there were like two or three of us who really built Costa from, 6 million to, close to 200 million over time. And the brand that I wanted to build when I went there was one that, I loved Patagonia, and Yvon Chouinard was my idol. And I wanted to build a brand that was purpose-driven, mission-driven, that sort of blended cause and commerce together. And, at the time, that was probably early 2000s. There weren't a ton of those brands around. But it's something that I really felt strongly that I wanted to do and set about to do it and was really successful with it. I mean, the Costa brand became kind of a cult. We were named one of the top 10 cult brands in North America at one time. And they had this big deal up in Canada that was like the cult gathering. And it was, and there were huge brands, like Converse, and, even Airbnb was there, and all these big brands. And then there was us, little Costa. But all the research showed that the consumers were super loyal to the brand. And we had built this following, and we built it around, treating people right and great customer service and, giving back and making the world a better place. And that's what that whole brand was built around. And it was very personal. I felt like I was Costa and Costa was me, and the brand totally reflected who I was. And I mean, we had blood, sweat, and tears, man. You work on something for 15 or 20 years and build it. And then when it got sold to a giant European company, it was really clear to me that those days were over, and we were going to just be a product in their portfolio. And so I left and I went to work at Sims, and was asked to come there, and they'd kind of been recruiting me for a while, and I just was happy at Costa and didn't want to go. But at that point I decided to go, and it's like, okay, well, we want you to turn Sims into the Costa of the Walt. But it was a private equity deal, and they actually did not once I got out there. So we had a great couple of years in Bozeman, but it was just not going to be a fit, not something that was really going to stimulate me. And so I left and then went to a little company called Hook out of Charleston, did some consulting for a while, then went to Hook, same kind of deal, private equity. They were not really interested in conservation or anything like that, So I left there after just a year. And then my wife and I sat down. I said, babe, this is not working. What we built at Costa was fantastic. That's going away because of money. Sims is not happening because of money. Hook didn't happen because of money. The only way that we can sort of live our vision, our personal vision and our mission is if we have our own company. And she was like, oh, that doesn't sound good. How are we going to do that? We don't have any money, because
Right.
we didn't have any money. And about that time, COVID hit. And so we had time in our house in Charleston just to sort of kind of dream board it and, vision thing and just envision this brand and envision Bajio. And then, I met a guy who knew how to raise money, and I'd made a bunch of friends over the last 15 or 20 years and had done a lot for a lot of people. And they kind of came out of the woodwork and, took out their checkbooks and invested. And so we've got, got about 30 investors who are all like, there's no institutional money. It's all just friends and fishing people. And so we were off and running. And, Bajio we're in our third year now, and we did 4 raises and raised about $12 million, and
wow.
It's doing great. So our purpose is to use this company as an economic engine to drive all the work that we want to do, whether it's conservation or bringing young people in, all the things we're passionate about. But you have to have a successful company to generate the funds
right.
to do that. And a startup, by nature is small. And, that's sort of not the struggle really, but it is kind of a struggle. Is like, we want to do more than we can do at this point, but we actually are doing a lot. And, but balancing those two things, is part of the trick, but we're doing great. And I'm so happy that we made that move.
Yeah, that was really cool. That's an awesome story. And I love, Yvon, and whenever Patagonia comes up, it's always a good thing because, you look at what he's done, and recently, right, given away, the company essentially to the earth, to the environment, right? This is this thing. And in 3 years, that's what's cool about what you have going, because it definitely seems like, from my perspective, you guys have been out there for a lot longer than 3 years. And I think that's a testament to, what you're doing out there. So this is really cool. And COVID, again, like back to the COVID, right? It seems like for all the bad of COVID, it was one of those periods that checked everybody like, okay, what do we want to do with our lives? And that's what sounds like you had that opportunity to jump in.
Yeah, COVID, baby.
Yeah, COVID, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about the glasses, just so people who don't know, there's a lot of glasses out there. You mentioned Canada. I know I've talked to people that say like Maui Jims or the Canadian glasses and stuff like this, and there's all these different glasses out there. Talk about what you have going in your lineup. Like if somebody was going to buy a pair of glasses, are your glasses good for everything? Are they good for freshwater? Like, what do you recommend? Like if somebody wants to look at this, where do they start?
Yeah, well, I think the lens is the place to start. And if you're going to use sunglasses as a tool, then it's an optical tool, and and what it's meant to do is help you fish better, right? So that you want to be able, in the type of fishing we do, and in most kind of fishing, you want to be able to see the fish in the water. And the sooner you see the fish, the better a shot you have at catching it. You also want to protect your eyes and, stuff like that. But the bottom line is being able to see what you're casting to much better. And so there've been, some work done on that. When we were at Costa, we created the 580 lens, and that was really the first color enhancing lens that blocked yellow light and sort of made things, less busy and more clear, made some of the colors pop. And then, Smith came out with ChromaPop, and they, basically copied it. Even though there was a patent on 580, people got really close. Oakley came out with the lens. Maui Jim came out with the lens. So there were some copycats out there, but it was the Costa 580. It was sort of the top of the heap. But there wasn't really a lot of development that was done. I mean, that one was selling extremely well. Basically, you had 2 or 3 colors. You had the green and the blue and the silver. And, I was very involved in product development at Costa, and there just wasn't a lot of R&D being done on what's the next generation of lens. And so when I started Bajio, I was like, wow, there's a lot more, that we can do to take this to the next level. And where we landed as the biggest opportunity was with blocking blue light. And, you see a lot of people wearing blue light glasses that are clear now that, when they're on computer screens, they block the blue light. And blue light, I think the gamers are probably some of the first ones that discovered it. But, it screws up with your melatonin production, and so you don't sleep well. And so blocking that blue light, one benefit is it helps you sleep well. When we put it in sunglasses, and nobody's really done that before, all of a sudden everything got really clear because blue blur got wiped out. And the higher we dialed it up, the more clear things got. So when people put our glasses on, the first thing they notice is, wow, these are super clear, man. This is crazy. And clear is just beautiful. Clear is better,
Yeah.
But then underneath that, lenses are built, not to get too technical on this stuff.
Yeah. No, go for it.
Kind of built in a stack of different layers. And so the selection of each layer, the combination of layers creates different visual effects. So if you're in a flat situation, you want to see super deep down in the water, then, we created the pink and the purple, which have a red base to them. And it's demonstrable. I mean, we put them on the guides down in the flats and they freak out, on how good they are. And if it's super bright conditions, you need a darker lens, and the layers need to be a little bit different to get the right contrast. So we really tried to create a whole line of glasses that were good for any type of fishing conditions, and that really dialed up and improved upon the ability to see. And I think we were successful, and that's kind of the core when picking sunglasses is that lens.
What would be an all-around, like if you're, well, there probably isn't all-around, but if let's say you're in freshwater and, you want a pair of glasses just for your typical Montana trout trip, what do you recommend? Do you have a bunch of different lenses for that?
Yeah, I think the silver mirror is good for that, just sort of an all-purpose. It's right in the middle in terms of light transmission, which is how much light it lets in. And then it has a copper base, so it has a lot of red in it. It's not super red. So it's a really good all-purpose, and I think probably the best trout lens that we have. The pink and the purple are low-light lenses, and so those work really great out west. One attribute is that when you look through the pink lens and the sun is reflecting off the water, if without sunglasses, that reflection is white. And with our pink lens, it sometimes has a pink tint to it. And sometimes that freaks people out, but it doesn't really it doesn't hurt the performance of it. And you get over that pretty quickly. So for me personally, the pink is my go-to. I wear pink all the time.
Okay.
We call it rose. It just has the best contrast, the clarity. It's really amazing.
Nice. Pink. Okay, good. So, and yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of tech, and other stuff we're not going to cover here today as far as on your lineup, but I guess one thing from the older guys, the readers, do you guys do that where you have kind of the bifocals or whatever blended in? Do you have that style?
Yeah, we've got bifocals, and, for us, because we make everything here, any frame with any type of lens, we cut it here, so we can do anything. The other brands that have the readers, it's limited to just a few styles, but literally any style that we have, you can get readers in, or prescription. Whatever type of lens you need, we can make it here.
Today's episode is sponsored by Jackson Hole Fly Company. They've been designing and manufacturing fly fishing equipment and flies since 1978 in their home base in Wyoming. In 2020, they launched jhflyco.com and started selling gear directly online to anglers all over the country. You can go ahead and right now and check out their huge selection of rods, reels, fly lines, tools, accessory. And right now, if you go to jhflyco.com/swing, you can get 25% off your first order. Just like Amazon, they'll ship everything directly to your door, saving you time and money. But unlike Amazon, you'll be supporting a great fly shop and this podcast by simply grabbing a few products, maybe just a couple of flies. Check it out. There you go. Get free shipping right now. All orders over $50 and get that 25% off your first order. jhflyco.com/swing. Okay, back to the show.
Right, and we'll send everybody, like we said, BajioSunglasses.com if they have questions or want to look at that. I was kind of curious just as far as, your like perfect day on the water. It sounds like the flats, are that. But how would you describe that? You want to go on, you got your next trip coming up. What would be that perfect day? Is it a permit trip or what does that look like?
Yeah, if it had to be the perfect day, we were definitely on a saltwater flat. Couple of different places come to mind, but and I don't know, the magic time for me is just first thing in the morning. So you go out usually on a panga, and there's, especially the first day, there's that excitement, and you're trying to decompress from what's been going on at work or whatever, and you get in the boat and I'm usually with Marguerite, and we just go out onto the flat, and it's super early in the morning, and you just see like the whole world waking up, and you see the birds coming in and they're feeding. You see the bait and the other fish just popping and rolling everywhere, and it's just like calm, and it's just freaking incredible. And that first hour or two is just magic. And then when you see a permit tailing in that environment,
right?
I mean, it does not get any better than that. It's freaking incredible.
God, that is cool. And some of your first trips out there, were you out there? I know I heard some stuff. I think you might have been working with Oliver White. I think he was with Costa at the time. But did you have a lot of guided experiences, or did you do a lot of DIY, through your journey in fly fishing?
Yeah, I think I did both. But, Oliver and I have been friends for a really long time. And I was at Abaco Lodge when he started that.
Oh, wow.
The first week that he opened, he invited me down, and we had Yvon there and all that Pirates of the Flats TV show crew. They were filming their first episode there, and so he and we did Indie Fly together, and the whole Arapaima Rewa stuff we did together, and so we've been and Beth and Oliver and Marguerite and I have traveled the world together. But Oliver, I think he was with me when I got my first bonefish, my first permit, which I got before he got his first permit back, and my first tarpon. So he was kind of there for my first on all those species. And it was kind of a show early on, but I've gotten to be a better fly fisherman since then.
Right.
Yeah. And, he said to me one time, he's like, look, don't get frustrated about not being the best caster out here. He said, the only people you ever fish with are guides. And if you think about it, and those guys are freaking pros. So you're not going to be as good as them. And not for a long time. And that definitely helped calm me down a little bit and be less anxious about all of it.
Yeah. I hear it. No, it's pretty cool. Yeah, Oliver's awesome. And he's out now. I think he's out west, right? He's got the lodge out on the Snake now, which is a pretty amazing area too.
Yeah, Jimmy Kimmel, man. He's the guy to the stars.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Jimmy's a fly fishing fanatic too, right?
Yeah, huge. I mean, he bought a freaking lodge out there.
Right. He bought the lodge.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love the stories with that and Oliver. It's kind of it started out as a sad story, right? Because I think there was the lodge got destroyed, and I can't remember what hurricane that was, but that's kind of what got Oliver going, right? Or moving.
Yeah. I mean, the Abaco got just decimated by a hurricane, and so they had to shut it down. And I don't know the exact timing, like what came, but Oliver's always looking at new opportunities, and so he had managers running Abaco and Andros, and so he didn't have to spend like a ton of time there and could do other things. But yeah, he ended up selling his interest, I think, to Nervous Waters, and that got him fully out of there.
Right. This is great. Well, that's another story. We're going to have Oliver back on here, I think, again, too, soon. But talk about conservation a little bit. I want to dig into that and hear where your focus is now, with Bajio and just yourself personally. I know we talked about Yvon as a hard, standard to start to live up to or get, at that level. But how do you think of conservation? Where are you guys putting your efforts these days?
Well, I'm, primarily on the flats, but, my focus really is on the next generation of anglers and getting them involved in fishing and in fly fishing specifically, and then using that as sort of the gateway into understanding the world and from a conservation standpoint, but also from a community standpoint, the people who live and whose homes we actually fish in, whether it's Mexico or Honduras or any other place. And there's I don't know, there's still a lot of like colonialism is alive and well, and these foreign owners come in and they put a lodge in. And lodges are great. I fish at them all the time. They're awesome, but they'll put in a lodge, hire the local people, and keep all the profits, and the locals, get a nice job, but they don't really have any ownership. And so, trying to combat that whole mentality, I think it's something that millennials and Gen Zs are really tuned into, especially, with the advent of the internet and the ability to, sort of connect with people that you couldn't connect with before. But, using fly fishing to help them understand that indigenous people are, they're people just like us. They're not our servants. They're not there, to take care of us. They've got their own lives and they need to have respect. And that's part of why we started Indie Fly, was to help indigenous people own these fishing operations that could really transform their lives. So with Rewa and Guyana, the tribe owns the lodge. We don't own the lodge, and that's critically important to the success. And so anyway, getting young people to connect with people from other cultures, it also opens their minds. It lets them be not as American centric, and be more world citizens. So that traveling to fish is really important. And once you start fishing, you are a conservationist, and
Yeah.
That if you want to keep doing it, you better take care of the habitat and the people surrounding it and the fish and everything else. So still using adventure and fishing as the gateway into conservation, I think is our approach. But I think that, as we mentioned before, the idea of getting young people into the sport is not something that the big guys are stepping up to. If you look at all the big companies within the fly fishing industry, and specifically, there's not really any kind of youth recruitment movement going on.
That is interesting, because you would think that, and everybody I think talks about that, right? Because that's the next generation. But so why would that be? Why would the big companies, do you think, not want to be trying to focus more efforts on because the money's not there as much?
I think that's part of it. I think it's just a lot of short-sightedness, and it is almost like an exclusive club in a lot of ways. If you think about the fly shops, and then they make money off of booking trips. Well, who's going to go on a trip? Who can afford to go on a 5 or 10,000 a week trip? Well, it's people who are wealthy, and those people tend to be older. And then the guides themselves, they don't want a bunch of young DIYers coming down and screwing up. They want like river that's or flats that are just deserted. That they're selfish about it.
Yeah.
And then the equipment companies, like you mentioned, there's a couple that are coming out with lower priced equipment, but I mean, geez, there's a lot of super expensive stuff that you have to buy if you want to go do it. So it's kind of like, it's just all built around, commerce and making money, and you make money off the people who have the money. But the danger is, I mean, if you look at Orvis, and I love Simon, awesome guy, and he's trying to change some of this, but they've got an older consumer that they've had for for a long time. And Sims is the same way. Trout Unlimited, that all their members are pretty old. But it's kind of like Buick, at one time they were in the sweet spot of age probably, and then have just kind of grown with their customers and gotten older and not really tried to speak to that younger next generation.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, Buick definitely isn't you don't see too many young kids. I was just at in traffic today, and some kid pulled up in a Subaru. It was loud. He had some, whatever, the muffler, right? It was just this loud. He was obviously a young kid. I was in my truck, and he, wanted to race, right? Sort of thing. Got me thinking like, hey, that's the generation, right? That's the thing that I'm, and I remember that when I was that age. It's like a different period of your life. So how do you guys do that? I mean, the tip, right? Again, we're going to give some tips for businesses, but when you think of that, how do you engage with those younger, the younger generation? What's the success been for you guys?
Well, I think part of it is, the people that, when we first started, we got a photographer, a kid named Knox, who was actually, we were on a photo shoot. He was finishing up his last final exam at University of Texas. And then Maris was our videographer. She just graduated a couple months before that. And then our crew, Heather, who has Fish for Change, and Jesse, who has X Flats, and Elon, who does all his stuff, and Kayla, they're all young, and Piper. So we had them as our crew. And so just showing up and looking and feeling young, and then talking to the values that, young people have around inclusion and conservation and all those sorts of things, I think it just naturally began to attract that younger consumer. But we do have, we're getting ready to launch an app that really addresses this whole issue. And I expect it to be a little bit controversial with some people, but I think it's the right thing to do, and I'm pretty excited about it. But the app is called Bajio Trails. And so we're building fishing trails. They're basically DIY fishing. And the first one will be the Yucatan Peninsula. And then we'll do some in the United States. We'll do other international trails. It's a long-term project, but it's a way for young people to scrape together the money for a plane ticket, show up, and then be pointed to little places where they can DIY fish, and locals in the community that'll help them, and cheap places to stay, cheap places to eat, but just kind of like a low-cost DIY road trip, get exposed to fishing, and then make it, not just fishing, but also conservation stuff. So, hey, one day you can go fish, another day you can go help plant mangrove trees or coral reefs or whatever. So we're putting all that on an app. It's kind of like a travel app, but I don't think there's ever been one done like this for fishing. And, make it, put it on the bucket list for kids. I know my son, when he graduated from college, we bought him a backpack and a URL pass, and he went to Europe and backpacked around Europe. Well, I'd love for people who love to fish to have the opportunity to pick these trails and go fish those and hike those. So that's going to be our main initiative going forward. And, long term, we hope to build these trails all over the world.
Wow. That sounds like a very cool app. I think that is, the DIY thing I hear a lot about that from our listeners too. And we have a little travel program, and we've been trying to focus on trips that are reasonable. Like we're trying to, just because we know there's a lot of people out there that can't afford $8,000, $7,000 for a trip. So we've been trying to do stuff mostly in, North America to get people out. But I love this DIY thing because it's going to give people an opportunity to actually do it themselves. And like, so this is a great next step. Now tell us again, when is this going to launch? Do you have a date yet?
Yeah, I think we're going to launch it at Confluence in a couple weeks.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Perfect. Good deal. Yeah. And we've got, a couple of shout outs. We had Matt Schilling on episode 342, and he talked about Indie Fly. That was a great episode. So if people want to dig in deeper, and then, and I think we have I think Lucas Bicet, right, is coming up to talk about their program too as well. This is good. Okay, so you have some new things. What about with the glasses? Anything new coming on the glasses you want to give a shout out to as far as products lines coming in the next year?
Yeah, in the next few months, we'll launch a new line of sunglasses. So we try to do a few styles a year, and but some brands have like so many styles that you just don't even know where to start. So we try to keep our line pretty tight and pretty small, and cover all the bases, have something for everybody, but not go crazy. So I guess we'll launch them, early next year is usually when we introduce them. But yeah, we've got some cool styles. The younger folks they're not as tuned into like the 8 base wrap stuff. They kind of like cool looking glasses, and they fish and stuff that, we might have thought of as lifestyle before. So we're trying to blend the lifestyle with the sun protection that you get from more of a wrap type of glass. And so we'll be coming out with a couple of new styles in that vein next year.
Gotcha. That is interesting because I think my style, and I'm a little bit older, so I do like the wrap style typically. Maybe I'm just used to it. But how do you do that with the other styles that are more, they're flatter? It seems like they don't, as you corner your eyes, you do see light. How do you guys make that glass perform as well as a wrap?
Well, we call it a sun ledge, and it's kind of like an internal, you don't really see it as much from the outside, but because it's kind of set back, but it's on the top and on the sides, and it's just a piece of the frame that comes out almost like a side shield to give you more protection. So that's probably the main way, and then just the way that you build it, you can optimize that. And we do 6 base, which is not a 4 base would be really flat, and a 8 base would be really curved, and a 6 base is in between. So we still have some curve to them, which helps, but yeah, that sun ledge is something we developed that really works well.
Yeah. What would be a model of one of your glasses that have that sun ledge?
Like Caballo, which is
okay.
The one I wear, and Chelem would be another one. And then some of the more female-leaning frames like Paella and Pareso would have that. So, yeah, pretty much all of our 6 bases.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Mavrk Fly Fishing specializes in ultralight gear to take your tight line game to the next level. Euro nymphing was always a big struggle for me until I met up with Jeff on his home water. We had a half a day fishing with the Mavrk gear, and it got me fully dialed in. Mavrk only sells direct to anglers, keeping prices low and providing the best personal service. You're going to have to check in with Jeff right now and let him get you lined out on the water and improving your experience before you know it. You should also check out their new high-performance MVX rod, an extra-sensitive laser-accurate Euro nymph rod that weighs only 2.8 ounces. You mix this in with their ultralight Stinger reel, and you've got the lightest rod on the market right now. And right now, you can get 20% off your next order if you head over to mavrkflyfishing.com and use the coupon code MAVRKWFS20 on your next order. That's MAVRK WFS20, and we'll have a link for this in the show notes as well. You can check in with Jeff and get your Euro game dialed in right now and get on the water and get into fishing. You support this podcast and Mavrk Fly Fishing right now by clicking through that link. Okay, back to the show.
We talked a little about the DIY, that whole thing. You've done a little DIYing where you have a couple of tips for some people out there that maybe they're going to get your app. It's coming out soon. They've got this thing. Is the app going to do everything for them, or would you have any other tips you would give somebody? Let's say they're going to the Yucatan or somewhere, they're flying in and they're going to DIY it. What do you tell that person?
Yeah. So what we have done to help them is sort of like lightly guided in some ways. So we'll have a person in each town, and on the Yucatan Trail, I think there's 22 or 24 towns, and these aren't like Ascension Bay or Ishkalak or these famous places. These are places nobody's ever heard of, and so we have a person there that's sort of the host of that little town, and so they're going to know, like, hey, this beach over here, this is a good spot. We're not going to put those spots on the app because we don't want to, sort of blow them up. But we get them in the zone, and then the host can either be, a more experienced fishing person, or lots of times it's their kid. It's a kid, who's probably the same age, and they maybe aspire to get into guiding, but there's no slots available. So they can pay them $20 and they'll show you the good spots to go to. When it comes to selecting like what flies to use and then how to work the flies, that's a little bit more difficult, but I think that's stuff that they can learn online. They can learn from friends, those techniques, but how to catch a tarpon on the beach.
Right. That would be cool.
And stuff like that. But yeah, that's, it's, I don't know, when I was a kid, and, I hate to get into like, when I was a kid, but,
right.
But I don't know, our parents were a lot less responsible. And so we were able to go out and explore. I mean, when I was a kid, there was a creek in the back of our house. And my brothers and I had 3 brothers and all our friends, we would like be in that creek from dawn till dusk. And we would walk that creek for miles and, meet other kids in other neighborhoods and get in fights and find all kinds of creatures and fish and stuff like that. And all we had to do was be back by like 5 o'clock for dinner, and we were like 6 years old, 8 years old. That would never happen today.
No.
Parents are so protective. Sports, the same thing. We do pick up baseball games, pick up football games. We have like, playing tackle football, and I'm sure getting injured and hurt and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't organized with the fancy uniforms and all the trophies and all that kind of stuff. It was just pick up, And so I think we want to maybe inspire that spirit to get rekindled. And like, look, guys, get out and explore and try new stuff and get scared and do things that are somewhat dangerous. And, I'm sure everybody's lawyers, insurance companies to hear me say that, but that's where you learn who you are. Is by exploring, because you're exploring the world at the same time you're exploring yourself and the limits, and what can you do when you're in a tight spot? What happens? How do you respond? So I think exploration is just fundamentally so important, and so hopefully they'll show up with that kind of attitude to do something like the Yucatan Trail.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I grew up, you're talking about exactly. I mean, I had 3 brothers. I grew up around the creek. We were down there all day. In fact, some nights we even told our parents we were staying over at somebody else's house and we camped out on the creek.
Right.
You know what I mean? But yeah, the kids nowadays, I can't imagine my kids, right, ever doing that sort of stuff. What about the kids, the generation of you're talking about? And I'm not sure what the folks who are kind of younger that are in you're working with you, but do you feel like they had that experience too, or is that something that they didn't have that they want to have? Or what's your take there on this? Because I don't know it as well as probably you do, or some folks that are working with them.
Yeah, I think that's their deficiency, much as
right.
Gen Y and Gen Zs have going for them. I've heard a lot of them say, people tell me to follow my passion,
Right.
and I know that's something I need to do, but I don't know what my passion is. I don't really have a passion.
Right. God.
And that's because they've been so protected that they haven't explored to find that thing, and they've kind of been slotted into, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a stockbroker, you're going to be these things that are going to make you money because money is the only thing that matters in the world. And that's the narrative that's out there. It's not that direct and that blatant, but that is the underlying narrative of everything. And so when you tell these kids, hey, follow your passion, don't just follow this prescribed future. They respond to it, they want to do it, but they just don't know how. And I think brands, companies, people, mentors, whatever that might be, getting shoulder to shoulder with the kids and helping them on that journey to find themselves is a huge thing. And I think it's something that, that's what we're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do is just kind of be the mentor and the guide that can help them find, and it sounds deep, but it's like, explore the world and find yourself. And if you find yourself, you will be happy. If you don't, you won't. And look at your parents. The divorce rate's 50%. Midlife crisis, blah, blah, blah. It's not a great example that we've set for these kids.
No, it's not. No, this is great. I love it. I love that we've gone into, this little part with the DIY, because I think that's something that, we should keep focusing on, and fly fishing and really anywhere. We're going to take it out here pretty quick, but again, any other things you want to highlight before we jump out of here as far as Bajio and what you have going, or anything, listeners can check out?
Not really. I mean, the other product that we are focused on is our hats, and we have Casey Anderson, who's was a guide at Pyramid Lake and sort of started that whole deal, and is a tattoo artist and has been out of Reno, although he just moved here. And it's actually Casey and his girlfriend Giovanna are living with my wife and I in our house while they get settled. But,
oh wow, cool! And
he has come in to be our artist, and he's done all these incredible drawings. I'm sitting here looking at all the new stuff on the wall, and we're trying to really bring that into everything that we do, along with Jay and his school bus. And so the vibe that we're really trying to bring in is about creativity, and it's about fun, and it's about hope, because so many of the, I don't know, I just feel like the industry has gotten kind of old and stale, and we need to revitalize it. And
right.
And we've gotten so focused on conservation and the world's coming to an end and all this.
I know.
We got to have hope. We got to have some fun. And
yes,
it's not, if the world's going to end, the world's going to end. Let's all be responsible. Let's help any way that we can. Let's help each other. But, if life is just work all the time, you burn out pretty fast.
What's it for? Yeah. What are we doing this for?
Yeah. So let's go out and have some fun.
I agree. We've done, we've always done conservation episodes, and we're doing more now. But I think earlier, when we first got going, I always felt like it was a downer. People didn't want to hear the conservation episodes because it was always a negative message. But it feels like the more I've talked, and I just did an episode on the Klamath Dams removal that's out, and that's a great story. And my guest there talked about how, some of these same things where it's not all a downer, there's some stuff we can do right now, follow your passion again. Let's make a change. And Yvon, I think, do you know Yvon a little bit? I guess you probably talked to him a little bit, but
yeah.
Sounds like he's a little pessimistic, or maybe has that that sort of thinking, but he's doing all this great stuff. And what's your take on what would be his take on this, to this question? How do we stay positive? What do you think he would say?
Yeah, I think I know him. I don't know him extremely well, but
yeah.
He does kind of go back and forth, and he can go into a dark place.
Right.
We all can,
Yeah.
And but he's very serious, and he has the clout to really tackle some of these big issues and these big people and institutions head on. And right. I think that's a good role. You need big companies who can do that. But again, I think as we get older, we tend to get more cynical. But if we can keep a youthful mindset, at least to a certain degree, and keep the joy into it. And there are a lot of positive things. Yeah, I do a lot of work with Trout Unlimited. I've been on the board for a long time, and I see a lot of stuff. And we'll be talking about this at the board meeting out in Spokane here shortly. But if you look at the before and after pictures for projects that they've done, it's incredible, and it makes you feel so good. You see some culvert that's all clogged up, and the water's all putrid looking and everything. And then you see that all the people go to work in the new culvert, and the stream's flowing and the fish are flowing. And then you look at, the hundreds of miles of habitat that they've opened back up. I mean, it is one success story after the other. And I don't think we're telling the success stories as well as we should. It's like when I read the frickin' New York Times every morning, I'm like, Jesus Christ, can we have a positive headline?
I know. The news is the worst. The news is the worst. It seems like I don't even watch the local news. You know what I mean? I haven't for a while, because it's always like, okay, here are the top 5 murders or whatever, so that the whole media, that's what's I think cool about podcasts is that, it's a little bit different, but the whole media has gone that way, right? How do you sell more? And it's not a good, I don't think it's a good thing. I think there's a lot of positive messages, like you say, out there. That's cool. So you've been involved with Trout Unlimited. Has that been for a little while? How long have you been in there?
I don't know, 10 or 15 years, maybe. A long time.
Oh, wow.
Long time.
Yeah.
And they're getting huge now, and the scale that they're getting and the resources, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Great news. I think they do need to connect more with the fishing community, ironically. But I think they've lost their relevance a little bit, and some of the younger folks coming in don't really know what they do or know about them. So, with Bajio, hopefully we can help them connect more to that younger market and get those kids as members and fans and stuff like that.
Right on. Well, let's take it out here. I always love to get a business tip. You've given us a few today, and I want to get to, first maybe what would be a tip for, we've got a lot of small brands, people that want to start, brands out here and listening. What would be your tip for somebody there? And then for you, what does success look like with Bajio? I mean, it feels like you're already getting some success, but how do you know when you get to that point where, wherever that point is?
Yeah, well, success being profitable is certainly
right.
one, but I think that's, profit's the result and not the goal. And if you are doing all the right things, all that stuff happens. So this has been a big year where we focused on getting profitable, which is great. But again, it's just kind of having the resources to do more and more around our mission. So I look forward to the day when I can just be traveling the world building fishing trails and have somebody else running the company. That's success for me. And, but also just keeping everything fresh and inspiring and vital, and just keeping everybody inside us, inside the company, just feeling excited and feeling fulfilled with what they're doing is success. I'm here in the office every day, and we've really tried to create a family environment. That word's overused a lot, but I've given everybody in the company stock options, so everybody's an owner of the company.
Oh, wow.
And that is so important. They've never had that in their entire life, and it just creates a completely different environment. I mean, there's dogs running around here. There's kids running around.
Yeah,
I wear flip-flops every day.
Nice.
So keeping that environment to where it feels like home and not another alien place that you go to for 8 hours a day and come back to home.
Right.
So all of that is success in my book.
Love that. And do you have people working around the country as well, or are most of the people in, kind of physically there?
We do have people around the country. I'm really trying to pull everybody close, and it's just something that's important about everybody being in one building in terms of brainstorming, collaboration, and all of that. But we do still have a few satellite folks. Our CFO lives in Charleston, and our product development team is in Toronto. So we have a few people scattered around, and then our sales reps, they live all over the place. And but probably in total, we've got 65 or 70 people as part of this now.
Yeah. And the people that are remote, how do you bring them into the family? Is there a way you can make them feel that same thing, even though they're in Toronto?
Yeah. I mean, they come and visit as often as they can. And we do a lot of, weekly Zoom calls with everybody. So it certainly helps. And, they get their owners as well. So that really gets them engaged from that standpoint. So yeah, it's probably more difficult, when they're not here, but it's still, I think people just started using that word. We feel like we're part of the family. And same with Elon. Last time Elon was here, we did a shoot in New Smyrna, and he's like, man, every time I come here and get together with you guys, I feel like I'm with family. And, Elon doesn't anybody and never says anything gratuitously. So that meant a lot that he felt that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I think that's one of and we had Elon on episode 309. Elon it was a great episode. The Black Steve Irwin, he's got the comedy thing going, but Yeah, I think, right, the diversity, back to that. And I always go back to this because the species, if you look at fish or really any animal, the more diverse the population, the community is, the healthier it is. And it's the same way, right, with us. The fact that if it's an old white guy and that's it, that's not good. But if it's a diversity of, all these different people, it's just a better place. So I think you're on track, Al. I think this has been great today with what we have, what we've covered here. We'll give a shout out, I guess, BajioSunglasses.com if anybody wants to check out your glasses, and IndieFly. So you're still involved with that. If we want to check out the conservation work, should we send them there, or do you have another place that people can kind of dig into some of the conservation stuff you have going?
Yeah, our website, we're actually rebuilding that section of the website because things have changed a little bit. But once we launch the Trails app, that'll be a really good place to check that out. And then we'll talk about all that on our website as well. That'll launch in a couple weeks. But so our social platform is really where we talk to the community about all the projects that we're doing, a little bit more so on the website. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, Instagram. Okay. Awesome, Al. Well, thanks for all the time today, and looking forward to staying in touch with you and, digging in. Maybe I'll get a pair. I don't have a pair of Bajios, so I'll hopefully get some of those and test them out. Maybe we'll circle back around with you and check in on with you next year, see how things are going.
Yeah, sounds awesome, Dave. I enjoyed it, man.
That is a wrap. You can grab all of the show notes at wetflyswing.com. And please follow us on Instagram and share this episode out with someone you love. Please send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, if you have any feedback or want us to put together an episode on this podcast for you. Check in anytime. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and would love to meet up with you on the water. We have new fly fishing schools going all year long and all around the country, so if you want to connect, let's do it right now. All right, time to get out of here. I hope you have a great evening. I hope you have a great morning or great afternoon wherever in the world you are, and I appreciate you for stopping by and checking out the show today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.